I remember the day everything changed, the moment my world tilted on its axis. It was a typical Wednesday evening, the kind that seemed mundane but held the potential for the extraordinary. I had just returned home from work, the scent of fresh paint lingering in the air. My wife Angela had been redecorating our living room, a project that had consumed her for weeks. I should have been excited to see the transformation, but instead I felt a gnawing unease. As I stepped through the door, I was greeted by silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, almost suffocating. I called out for Angela, but my voice echoed back at me, unanswered. I shrugged it off, thinking she was perhaps in the bathroom or had stepped outside for a moment. I walked into the living room, my heart racing with anticipation of seeing her. But the moment my eyes landed on the coffee table, everything shifted. There, lying carelessly among the scattered paint swatches and brushes, was a small, unassuming envelope. It was addressed to her, but it wasn't from me. My gut twisted as I picked it up, and a sense of dread washed over me. I opened it, my hands trembling as I pulled out the letter. The words were scrawled in hurried ink, filled with passion and longing. It was a love letter, and it was from the wedding dress designer, Noah, the man she had been working with for months. My heart sank. I could hardly process what I was reading. "I can't stop thinking about you," it began. "Every dress I design, I imagine you in it." The rest blurred together as a wave of fury and betrayal crashed over me. How could she do this? How could she betray our vows, our life together, with someone she barely knew? I felt the air leave my lungs, replaced by a hot, burning rage. I dropped the letter as if it were a live wire, my mind racing through memories of our time together. The laughter, the moments of intimacy, the dreams we had shared. All of it felt like a cruel joke. I had trusted her. I had given her my heart, and she had handed it to another man, a man who designed gowns for brides. It felt like a slap in the face, a betrayal so deep that it cut through the very fabric of my being. As I paced the room, I could feel my anger morphing into something darker. I thought about Noah, that smug, self-assured prick who had charmed my wife with his artistic flair and talent. I imagined him whispering sweet nothings in her ear, his fingers brushing against her skin as he helped her try on dresses. The image made my stomach churn. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, a volcano ready to erupt. I sank into our couch, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I thought of the nights we had spent together, the promises we made, now shattered like glass. I wanted to confront her, to scream and shout, to demand answers. But a different thought crept into my mind, one that was more insidious and dangerous. What if I could make her feel what I was feeling? What if I could turn the tables on Noah? The thought excited me and filled me with a sense of purpose. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was already calculating how to serve it. In that moment, I decided that I wouldn't just confront my wife. I would make sure every bride-to-be in this town knew the truth about the man who designed wedding dresses. I would ruin him just as he had ruined me. The plan began to form in my mind, and with it came a sense of clarity. This was no longer just about Angela. This was about justice, about making sure that no one else fell for his charms. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The seed of revenge had been planted, and I was ready to nurture it into something powerful. I would not let this betrayal go unpunished. Angela and I had been married for 5 years. We met in college, where I was studying business management and she was pursuing a degree in fashion design. From the very start, our relationship was a whirlwind of passion and creativity. I admired her ambition. She was driven, talented, and had a vision for her future that was as bright as the stars. We spent countless nights discussing our dreams, her aspirations to open a boutique, my hopes of climbing the corporate ladder. Our lives intertwined beautifully, or so I thought. After graduation, we settled into a comfortable routine. I took a job at a marketing firm, and Angela landed a position at a local bridal shop. I was proud of her, watching her flourish in a field she loved. She poured her heart into her work, helping brides find their perfect dresses and making their dreams come true. But as her career took off, I noticed subtle changes in her. Late nights at work turned into weekends spent with colleagues. I reassured myself that it was all part of her passion, a necessary sacrifice for someone aiming to make a name in the competitive world of fashion. Then came Noah. He was the designer at the bridal shop, the one responsible for the exquisite gowns that Angela raved about. I remember the first time she introduced me to him. He was charismatic, with an effortless charm that drew people in. His talent was undeniable. I could see the passion in his eyes as he spoke about his designs. But there was something about him that set off alarm bells in my mind. Perhaps it was the way he looked at Angela, or maybe it was the way she lit up when she talked about him. I dismissed my gut feelings, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Over the months, I watched their relationship evolve. Angela would come home buzzing with excitement after fittings, her eyes sparkling as she recounted stories of working with Noah. I tried to be supportive, but jealousy festered beneath the surface. It was a slow burn, a constant nagging feeling that something was off. I should have confronted her earlier, but I didn't want to be the insecure husband. I wanted to trust her, to believe in our marriage. Yet the late nights became more frequent and the excuses began to pile up. I have to help with a last-minute dress, or Noah needs my input on a project. I should have questioned her more, should have dug deeper, but I was afraid of what I might find. Instead, I buried my feelings, convincing myself that this was just a phase. It was easier to ignore the signs than to confront the possibility that my wife might be straying. As I replayed those moments in my mind, I began to see the cracks in our relationship. The intimacy we once shared had faded, replaced by a growing distance. I was busy with work, and Angela was consumed by her passion. We had fallen into a pattern of routine, and I had taken her for granted. I thought our love was strong enough to withstand the trials of life, but I was wrong. I had let my guard down, and in doing so, I had given her the space to wander. It was surreal to think that the man who had taken my wife from me was not some random stranger but someone I had welcomed into our lives. Noah was a talented designer, sure, but he was also a predator, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. I felt a mix of anger and humiliation, knowing that I had been blind to the signs, that I had trusted the very person who was now entwined in my wife's heart. As I sat in the living room, the letter still fresh in my mind, I realized I had to act. The betrayal was not just about Angela. It was about the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared. I felt a deep need for retribution, to show Noah that he couldn't just waltz into my life and take what was mine. I would expose him for who he really was. I would make him pay for the pain he had caused. The plan was taking shape in my mind, fueled by my anger and the desire for justice. I would use my connections in the community, the brides-to-be who looked up to me as a trusted advisor. I would spread the word, sowing seeds of doubt about Noah's character. It was time to turn my pain into something powerful, to reclaim my dignity and my marriage. With every passing moment, I felt more determined. I would show them both that betrayal would not go unpunished. I would make sure every bride knew the truth about the man behind the beautiful gowns. As the days passed after discovering Angela's betrayal, I found myself oscillating between despair and a burning desire for revenge. The emotional turmoil was exhausting, but within that chaos, a single thought crystallized. I would not let this go unpunished. I couldn't just confront Angela. I needed to make a statement that would resonate through the bridal community, a community where Noah thrived. I sat alone in my office, the dim light casting shadows on the walls, my mind racing. I began to map out my plan. I could see it clearly. I would spread a rumor about Noah, one that would tarnish his reputation and ruin his career. It would be easy to do. I had connections, friends who were engaged, and brides who trusted my opinion. All I had to do was plant the seed of doubt, and the rest would take care of itself. But as I contemplated this course of action, I couldn't help but wrestle with the moral implications. Was I really justified in destroying another person's life? I knew that revenge was often a double-edged sword, cutting both ways. Yet the thought of Noah's smug face, the way he had charmed my wife, ignited a fire in me that drowned out any lingering guilt. He had taken something precious from me, and now it was my turn to take something from him. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was reclaiming my power. In my mind, Noah wasn't just a man who had slept with my wife. He was a villain, a predator who preyed on the vulnerable. I convinced myself that I was not only avenging my own pain but also protecting other brides from his deceitful charms. I imagined the countless women who would be spared heartbreak if they knew the truth. This justification made the plan feel righteous, even noble. I started to gather information. I reached out to friends in the wedding industry, asking casual questions about Noah and his work. I wanted to understand how he operated, what made him tick. I discovered that he had a reputation for being a bit of a flirt, charming brides with his charisma, but nothing concrete that could truly damage him. Yet I knew that with a little creativity and exaggeration, I could turn the whispers into a full-blown scandal. The more I plotted, the more clarity I gained. I envisioned myself as the arbiter of justice, a crusader against infidelity. The thrill of revenge electrified me. It was intoxicating. I started drafting a plan to approach brides-to-be, those who were actively searching for their dream dresses. I could position myself as a confidant, someone they could trust. I would drop hints, weaving a narrative that would paint Noah as a man unworthy of their trust, a man who had no qualms about destroying marriages. I was careful to craft my words to make them sound like caution rather than accusation. Have you heard about Noah? I practiced in front of the mirror, trying to perfect my tone, casual yet concerned. He's talented, but I've heard some unsettling things about his professionalism. I would let the rumors build, allowing the bride's imaginations to fill in the blanks. It was a twisted game, and I was ready to play. The thrill of the hunt was almost palpable, and I found myself excited at the prospect of turning the tables. I imagined the look on Noah's face when he realized that his charm was no longer effective, that his reputation was crumbling. I wanted to see the shock and confusion sweep over him, to know that I had orchestrated his downfall. As I finalized my plan, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. I was no longer just a betrayed husband. I was a man on a mission. I would take control of my narrative, reclaim my dignity, and expose the truth. I knew that my actions would have consequences, but I was ready to face them. After all, Noah had made his choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. With each passing hour, I felt more resolved. The pain of betrayal had morphed into something powerful, a driving force that would propel me forward. I was ready to take the first step in my plan, to begin spreading the whispers that would change everything. I was ready to unleash my revenge. The first step was to identify the brides-to-be who frequented the bridal shop where Noah worked. I knew that Angela had made a number of friends during her time there, women who trusted her and would likely listen to me. I began by reaching out to a couple of Angela's old friends who were engaged, casually mentioning that I had been hearing some troubling things about the wedding dress designer. I needed to tread carefully, planting the seeds without making it obvious that I was out for revenge. "Have you met Noah?" I asked Sarah, a friend of Angela's who was planning her wedding. "I hear he's really talented, but I've heard some whispers about his reputation. Just be careful, you know." I could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind as she processed my words. I could see the concern etched on her face, and deep down, I felt a pang of guilt for what I was doing. But I quickly shoved that feeling aside, reminding myself of the pain Noah had caused me. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to spread the rumor, each conversation carefully crafted to sound like genuine concern rather than a personal vendetta. I spoke to brides at bridal fairs, mingling with them as they tried on dresses and chatted about their weddings. I became a trusted source of information, a confidant who had their best interests at heart. I would drop hints about Noah's flirtatious behavior, how he had a habit of getting too close to the brides during fittings, and how some women had felt uncomfortable with his attention. "Just keep an eye out," I'd say with feigned nonchalance. "I've heard some unsettling stories." I watched as the whispers began to take root. I could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes, the way they began to question Noah's intentions. It was exhilarating, knowing that I was planting the seeds of doubt that would eventually bloom into full-blown suspicion. One evening, I attended a bridal show where Noah was showcasing his latest designs. The atmosphere was electric, filled with excitement and anticipation. I felt a mix of anxiety and exhilaration as I approached the booth, ready to confront him. He stood there, charming brides and their families, his easy smile disarming everyone around him. I watched as he laughed, his eyes sparkling with confidence. As I approached, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to confront him, to let him know that I was onto him, but I held back. Instead, I casually struck up a conversation with one of the brides who was admiring a gown he had designed. "Isn't it beautiful?" she gushed. "Noah really has a way with fabrics." "Yeah, he does," I replied, my voice steady. "But just remember, I've heard some not-so-great things about him. He can be a bit flirty, just be cautious." I could see the bride's expression change, a flicker of doubt crossing her features. I smiled inwardly, knowing that my words were taking root. Over the next few weeks, I doubled down on my efforts. I started attending more bridal events, engaging with brides and their families, sharing my concerns about Noah. I became a familiar face, someone who was always there to offer advice and warnings. The more I spread the rumor, the more I felt a sense of power. I could see the impact of my actions. Brides were starting to question Noah's professionalism, his charm no longer as effective as it once was. I even overheard conversations among brides discussing their discomfort with Noah's behavior. "Did you hear about that designer?" one bride whispered to another. "They say he gets too close during fittings." It was a thrill to know that I was the catalyst behind those conversations, that my words had taken on a life of their own. But as the thrill of revenge consumed me, I began to grapple with the consequences of my actions. I saw how Noah's reputation was beginning to falter, how the once admiring brides were now wary of him. It felt good to see him squirm, but deep down I knew I was crossing a line. I was playing with fire, and I could feel the heat of it licking at my heels. One night, as I lay in bed beside Angela, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. She had no idea what I was doing, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was becoming the very thing I despised. I was betraying trust, manipulating others for my own gain. But then I thought of Noah, of the betrayal he had inflicted upon me. I steeled myself, reminding myself that I was fighting for my dignity, for the love I had lost. The next day I received a call from Sarah, one of the brides I had spoken to. "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I've decided to go with a different designer," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I just feel uneasy about Noah. Thanks for the heads up." My heart raced with a mix of triumph and trepidation. I was making a real impact, but at what cost? As I hung up the phone, I realized that my plan was working, but the exhilaration was starting to fade. The thrill of revenge was being overshadowed by the weight of my actions. I was caught in a web of my own making, and I could feel the consequences tightening around me. The momentum of my plan was undeniable. Word was spreading like wildfire, and soon Noah's name became synonymous with discomfort and distrust. I watched from the sidelines as the once admired designer began to slip from grace. Brides who had once clamored for his gowns were now opting for alternatives, hesitant to work with someone whose reputation had been tainted by whispers. Each time I heard of another bride choosing to go elsewhere, a dark satisfaction filled me. I was winning, but with every victory came a gnawing unease. I had set this ball in motion, and now I could feel the repercussions creeping in like shadows lengthening at dusk. I started receiving calls from mutual friends who had heard the rumors. "Is there something going on between you and Noah?" one asked, concern lacing her voice. "I've heard some unsettling things." I had to tread carefully, keeping my responses vague. "It's just something I heard," I would say, trying to downplay my involvement. Each time I felt the walls closing in, the pressure mounting. Then one afternoon I received a call from Angela. She sounded anxious, her voice trembling slightly. "Can we talk? I've heard some things about Noah and I'm worried." My heart raced. I had been so focused on my revenge that I hadn't considered the fallout this would have on her. I felt a wave of guilt crash over me, but I quickly pushed it aside. I needed to maintain my composure. "Sure, what have you heard?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "There are whispers that he's been unprofessional, that he gets too close to his clients," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Is it true? I hesitated, the weight of my lies pressing down on me. I could feel the tightness in my chest as I considered how to respond. I think it's just rumors, I said finally, forcing a casual tone. You know how people are, they love to gossip. But deep down, I knew I was lying. I was the one who had started the gossip, the one who had twisted the narrative. I could hear the uncertainty in Angela's voice as she tried to reconcile what she was hearing with the man she thought she knew. I just want to make sure you're okay with everything, she said, her concern palpable. I reassured her, but inside I was a storm of conflicting emotions. I wanted to protect her from the truth of my actions, but I was also terrified of what would happen if she ever found out. The tension between us grew, and I could see the change in her demeanor. She was distant, her mind preoccupied with the rumors swirling around her. Meanwhile, Noah's career began to crumble. I learned through the grapevine that he had lost several contracts, and the bridal shop where he worked was starting to feel the impact. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction each time I heard of a new bride who had chosen to cancel her appointment with him. The whispers had morphed into something more substantial, and I was at the center of it all. I was the architect of his downfall. But then I received an unexpected call from Noah himself. My heart raced as I answered, unsure of what to expect. I need to talk to you, he said, his voice steady but laced with tension. I've heard some things and I want to know if you're involved. I was taken aback. I had underestimated him. What do you mean? I asked, trying to play dumb. The rumors about me, he replied, his tone sharp. They're coming from somewhere and I have a feeling it's you. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, my voice betraying me. Don't play games, he shot back, his frustration palpable. I've lost business and it's affecting my career. If you're behind this, I swear. Swear what? I interrupted, anger bubbling to the surface. That you keep taking advantage of women. You think I'm going to let that slide? There was a pause on the other end and I could hear him breathing heavily. You don't know what you're doing, he said finally, his tone softer but filled with an edge of desperation. You're ruining my life. In that moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I really the villain in this story? I had convinced myself I was acting out of justice, but now I was faced with the reality of my actions. I was destroying a man's career, and for what? To soothe my own wounded pride. I hung up the phone feeling hollow, the thrill of revenge dissipating into a cloud of guilt. The next day I received a call from Angela. Can we talk? She asked, her voice trembling. I need to know the truth. It was the moment I had been dreading. I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of my deceit pressing down on me. I knew I had to make a choice, continue lying and risk losing her forever, or come clean and face the consequences of my actions. As I stared out the window, watching the world go by, I realized that I could no longer hide from the truth. I had to confront the reality of what I had done, not just to Noah, but to myself and to Angela. The consequences of my revenge were spiraling out of control, and it was time to face the music. The conversation with Angela loomed over me like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. I could feel the tension in the air as I prepared to face her, the weight of my deception pressing down on my chest. I knew I could no longer avoid the truth. As I sat across from her at the dining table, her eyes searching mine for answers, I felt a wave of shame wash over me. Tell me what's going on, she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. I've heard so many things about Noah and I can't help but feel like there's more to this. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. I had to choose my words carefully. Angela, I need to be honest with you, I began, my voice trembling. I've been spreading rumors about Noah. Her expression shifted, confusion morphing into shock. What? Why would you do that? Because he hurt me, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I found out about the affair and I couldn't stand the thought of him taking advantage of you and other brides. I thought if I could ruin his reputation, it would somehow make me feel better. The silence that followed was deafening. Angela's face fell and I could see the hurt in her eyes. You went behind my back and tried to destroy someone's life, she asked, disbelief etched in her features. You think that's right? I thought it was the only way to make things right, I replied, desperation creeping into my voice. He betrayed us and I wanted to protect you to make sure you knew the truth. But you didn't tell me, she said, her voice trembling. You chose to handle it this way instead of trusting me. I could have helped you. We could have faced this together. The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had acted out of fear, out of a desire for control, and in doing so I had betrayed her trust. I had become the very thing I despised, a manipulator, someone willing to hurt others to soothe my own pain. As the conversation continued, I realized that my revenge had not only hurt Noah, it had also poisoned my relationship with Angela. I had let my anger cloud my judgment, and in the process, I had driven a wedge between us. I could see the disappointment in her eyes, the realization that the man she loved was not the man she thought he was. I can't believe you would do this, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought we were better than this. I thought we could trust each other. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes as I struggled to find the right words. I'm so sorry, Angela. I was consumed by my anger and I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I was only thinking of myself. The silence hung heavy between us, and I knew that my actions had consequences far beyond what I had anticipated. I had not only damaged Noah's career, but also jeopardized the trust in my marriage. I felt like a fool, realizing that my quest for revenge had ultimately led me to betray the one person I loved the most. In the days that followed, I reached out to Noah, attempting to make amends. I wanted to apologize for the damage I had caused, to let him know that I recognized the harm I had inflicted. I felt a strange mix of guilt and relief as I spoke to him, acknowledging my role in the chaos that had engulfed his life. I'm sorry for what I did, I said, my voice steady. I let my anger get the best of me and I realize now that it was wrong. I hope you can find a way to rebuild your career. His response was measured, tinged with the pain of betrayal, but also an understanding that I was attempting to make things right. I appreciate you saying that, he replied, his tone softening. It's going to take time to rebuild, but I hope we can both move forward. As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had taken the first step toward redemption, acknowledging my mistakes and seeking forgiveness. But I also understood that healing would take time, both for Noah and for Angela and me. In the weeks that followed, I worked hard to regain Angela's trust. I was open and honest about my feelings, and I made a conscious effort to communicate better. It was a long road, filled with difficult conversations and uncomfortable moments, but I was committed to rebuilding what I had broken. I learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, ultimately led to a cycle of pain that only perpetuated more hurt. I had to confront the darker parts of myself, the jealousy, the anger, and learn to channel those emotions into something constructive. I realized that love required vulnerability and trust, and that sometimes facing the truth was the only way to heal. As I reflect on that tumultuous period, I've come to understand that betrayal can take many forms, and the path to forgiveness is often fraught with challenges. But through it all, I learned the importance of honesty, communication, and the profound strength of love. In the end, I chose to rise above the pain and seek a better way forward. I made a commitment to myself and to Angela, to be better, to do better, and to cherish the love we had fought so hard to preserve. And as I look back, I know now that true strength lies not in revenge, but in the ability to forgive and rebuild. Thank you for joining me on this journey.